words, all for the best, or some bizarre test. It is what it is, and whatever. Time is still the infinite jest. The arrow flies when you dream. The hours tick away. The seconds tick.
Yo, what's up, guys? Back at it.
How's it going?
Can't complain, man.
This keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So, what? What's that? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to duck, certain people. Disguise, monos.
Everybody's message is Z-shaped.
Yeah. I hadn't shaved in a long time. I hate shaving every day. Right. When I started off, I had to do that. You're like a resident, blah, blah. You have to be professional. I hate shaving every day. I hate ties. Hate corporate. I guess that's why we do what we do. And so I grow the beard, but then it gets itchy. Anybody who has a beard knows I'd had it for like a year or two, and you trim it, but you don't shave it, and it gets super itchy and it gets kind of gnarly. And so then trimming it doesn't cut anymore. You just got to take it to the bone. So I did it. Yeah, it's always funny. Every couple of years I do that, and people kind of freak out.
A couple of years. It was a couple months since last.
No, like a year.
Like 8 months.
Yeah, 8 months maybe. Yeah, feels like a long time.
I'm with you on that. I just shaved yesterday. It's
how often do you shave?
I have to shave like twice a week because this is yesterday, and I already have like.
If I shave every day, I get very irritated.
Yeah, I won't shave every day, but if I by the time if I let this go till Monday, it'll be like half a beard.
Yeah.
Grow it in like 4 days.
I'll trim it every couple of weeks and keep it. So my wife likes a trim beard. She doesn't like it clean shaven, doesn't like it. If it was up to me, I would just grow it out.
Yeah.
But then people look at me, you can't win. They look at me weird when I shave. They look at me weird when I grow it out. It's like, it's funny how much you do for other people.
Yeah.
You don't realize it until, anyway.
Do whatever makes you happy, Z.
Hey, dude, you don't have to tell me twice. To be honest, I'd rather, in terms of housekeeping and stuff, I'd rather just skip that. I know there's a bunch of things we have. We have a prenatal class this weekend. Yoga classes abound throughout the Baker Health. We have them everywhere. We have a bunch of new features coming out on the app to make people. Big hit was the emojis on the app. I didn't realize that was such a big hit. Yeah, no, but the members love it. They keep like thumbs upping. I'm like, all I said was the med was sent. They're like triple like heart and 100, so they're really using it. But there's a lot of really cool stuff coming up in the app, like really cool stuff. The biggest thing that's coming now is the content we're putting up there. So on our app, like you could schedule, you could do whatever. But what we started to do, it's been functional for now. Like you could schedule, you could text the doctors and get an answer in a minute. Refills, all that stuff. But what we did now is we have a lot of content on mental health, yoga, fitness. So you could go into the app and watch videos on like what's a good morning routine for meditation, and you could just follow the app.
Right.
And so we're building out like more wellness content for our members.
That's great.
So anyway, you can just we should just do posts about that separately, so I don't have to waste our guests' time about it. But tonight, one thing I think about before I allow you to just introduce yourself, one thing during this journey that Mo started, and I joined him on when we started this IG Live stuff, was as we've done more and more, we're trying to offer things to members and people who watch and listen that is very important to their wellness, their well-being, their mental health, their physical health, but that they can't find in most places. That's kind of like the perpendicularity we're targeting for, right? So even when we interview like a cardiologist, which we've done once, we try to talk about the stuff that they don't know, right? Because a lot of guys go to the cardiologist, they still have a lot of cardiac questions. A lot of guys go to nutritionist and they still have nutrition questions. So we try to do that. I think the guest we have this, are you okay with dogs?
Yeah, totally.
You sure?
Yeah.
Because I could get them out. Okay.
No.
So the guest tonight is really, I think, up to this point, the most the guest that most exemplifies that feature of what we're trying to do, which is getting you stuff that you really, really want to know about. We know because you ask us in the office or you ask us on the chat, but there's not much high quality information out there. And I think when my guest goes over his background and what he does and so on, I think you'll be very excited. I think you'll like, a lot of people everybody tells me like the guy who cuts my hair, who's my very close friend of mine, is like, Z, I'll be driving and I listen to it as a podcast, even though it's alive. Or a lot of the moms, like they're cooking or whatever, or dads are cooking. I think for this one, you're going to put down the knife, or you're going to pull over and listen, because our guest is really informed, very informative, very specialized in something close to my heart, which is, you know, peds and adolescents, but in terms of a feature of their psychosocial well-being. But I don't want to take too much time, because I know you're going to be excited and want to have a good conversation, listen to a good conversation, have a lot of questions. So with that, if you don't mind, friend, just give us your journey and background.
Crazy journey, by the way.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, my name is Keith Senzer. I'm a youth empowerment and leadership coach. I've been doing this now since 2014. Really, what I was in the hotel business. I owned a bunch of catering halls. Like, that's my entire history, was hospitality management, things like that. And in 2014, I didn't really want to do it anymore. I mean, it was killing me, the hours, and but I have a daughter with generalized anxiety disorder. I have a son with ADHD and anxiety, and I found out at like 45 that I have ADHD. So when I was growing up, I wanted to be a child psychologist, and my parents were like, well, it's a lot of school. You really struggle with school. Maybe you should go, you're good with people. Maybe go into the people business. So, what do? We listen to our parents, and God bless their souls. I love them. They were great parents, but you listen. Yeah. So I went to school for hotel management, and that's what I did. And then I got out of the hotels. I bought a catering hall, ended up with 2 catering halls, a huge off-premise business. I mean, it was a very successful business, but I never went to work and was like, oh my God, I love what I do. It was means to an end. In 2014, I had a bit of a situation where I just decided I don't want to be in business anymore with the person I was business with. And I got out, sold it, and started this journey. So, I've been doing it now full time, probably since COVID. It took time, right? You have to build it. You start here, and it was but yeah, now I work with teens, middle school, high school, college, grad school, on social emotional.
That's like a great journey. And I'm going to get back to that and ask some questions.
Sure.
But before I get to that, to finish off the story, can you give us like where you are now? What are the typical cases, for lack of a better term, that you're doing?
So I do a bunch of different things. Okay. I have a couple of companies. So my Power Shift Coaching, which is my main company, okay. I do a lot of one-on-one coaching on mindset, mental health, self-confidence, finding your tribe. I work with a lot of neurodivergent kids who struggle to fit in, so how to fit in, how to be more social, things you can do to engage, so a lot of social emotional stuff one-on-one. I do a lot of group coaching. I also social emotional related, but I always find group coaching is better, because when you have a group of kids, they all share. And when they share, they all start to see, hey, we're not alone, right? Like, we all struggle with the same thing.
What's the setting of the group? Is it like a team?
Yeah. I usually try to do, it's either, high school or middle school, or I won't mix kids, because conversations are different, right? Like, college kids are talking a lot about relationships and, sex and drugs, right? And high school, maybe a little, and middle school, they're not there yet. Middle school's bullying and, finding my group of people. So
but do you do it on behalf of the school?
Sometimes with the school, sometimes I'll go to the local YMCA or JCC or something, a local, local facility that will host it. Okay. But that's usually in person. I don't like to do those virtually.
Yeah.
And then I also am the coaching manager. A friend of mine owns a company called Order Out of Chaos. It's an executive functioning company. So I do a lot of one-on-one coaching on executive functioning, which is time management, organizational skills, study habits, procrastination, all the things we don't teach in school. Like,
are those like parents will enlist you for their child?
Yeah. Parents will call, and, either I'll coach them or I'll assign a coach to them that works for us. And then I also started doing group coaching with that in the local school districts, where we'll go in and we'll run workshops on it, because the truth be told, many of the neurodivergent kids actually get those services, right? Yeah. Because they're in special need and special ed, and they get it. My biggest group of kids that I end up working with that struggle the most, sometimes are these Ivy League kids that are at they're at Yale, and they're bombing their first semester because they never had to study a day in their life. And all of a sudden they don't know how to study. They have no study habits. They're completely disorganized. And also, right, we don't teach them in high school that, hey, when you go to college, like, there's no structure. It gets ripped out. It's like, you're going to go to class maybe 5-6 hours a week, and all of a sudden they have all this time on their hands. If you want to, right? Exactly. So I do a lot of executive functioning coaching. And then I have another company called Design and Align Legacy Group with my friend Jody. She's a psychologist, Dr. Jody Coons. We wrote a 23-week social emotional learning and life skills curriculum for school. So it's not just social emotional, it has financial, it has budgeting, it has
So that adults
effective
can benefit
communication,
from that as well.
everybody. And what's nice about it is wherever the kids are learning, they have to bring it home. There's something called Care to Connect cards where they go home and they teach their parents what they learned. So there's a common language at home too, because a lot of what happens is they get it at school, the parents have no idea what's going on.
Right.
And I mean, if you're teaching your kids about acceptance,
Right.
parents need to understand what that means and what
Yeah.
that means for your kid. And when they can talk about it and share at the dinner table,
Right.
to me, like once the dynamic at home kicks in with what they're learning at school, you know, now you're starting to make impact at home too, which is, I think, a lot of what a lot of these SEL programs don't have.
Do you ever have like adult clients?
I do. People ask me to coach them.
I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I do. It's more, oftentimes I'll get parents reach out to me for like more just like parental advice. And to be honest with you, if it's not like something that needs a client, like I'll talk to anybody. Like I don't charge for that. Like, you know, if somebody wants to talk to me,
How about like career advice?
so I will work with kids on setting goals and understanding like I have some assessments I can do with them. I'm not a career coach.
Good.
Like if they really want to focus on career, I have an amazing group of people that I can refer them to that are specific. Like my friend Phil Vitrano. I mean, that's all he does. Phil is like, he was in the tech world. So he created this software where like he will literally talk to these kids, plug in information, and will spit out careers. And then he'll help them define what they want to do. I'm more about
like based on their strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah. I'm more about how do you get into the job?
Okay.
You know, what do you need to do to get there?
Okay.
Right. What does it look like? But the actual career advice, I do some assessments to get them in the right direction, but it's the same thing with like college counsel. Like that's not my strength. My strength is social emotional and executive functioning. That's really what I strive at. I thrive at.
So that's incredible. I want to talk a lot about the professional side of things. Can we go back? Because one thing I always tell Mo, and when we've been fortunate to have like dynamic guests, like other than like one or two guests that I was like half asleep for, I'd say 95% of the time I'm like super interested and engaged. And I find that it's the folks who have like a very special personal journey and that end up doing what they're doing because they want to, not because they ended up there. And there's almost like a shift I find in people's lives. And I think the reason for that is, what are the chances you're 21, 22 and you know exactly what you're going to do? And then when you're 40, that's what you're doing, right? I think it's following your passion. I think some people get lucky. I think if you have the right mentors and the right circumstance, that can happen. But I think the problem, so then if that's the case, why are most people not happy when they're 40, 50, 60? And they should be at the peak of their professional powers because they made the decision early. They found out that's not the right decision, but now I need that paycheck. I'm stuck in a job. I have a mortgage and kids. And so it's funny how many guests we get, I guess, because we're looking for special people. We get special people who are the rare, because if you listen to this thing that we do, almost half the time, somebody like in their 40s, like changed careers, which would make it sound a lot more normal than it is, right? I know a lot of parents I take care of who come to me and like, we become friends. Like you take care of someone's kids for 10 years, 15 years, you have a very personal relationship. And I hate doing this, I hate doing that, but I want to, like, you going from the hospitality catering and then just being like, hey, I'm going to switch to this. Can you talk about the courage? Because that takes courage to say, you said you have kids, so it takes courage. You had responsibilities. And then how did you straddle that on a practical way? I'm assuming you didn't like go from zero. And if you did, let me know, but 0 to 100. So the courage, like, because it didn't, you probably toiled with it mentally. What was that mental journey to go from one career to another mid-career? And then how did you do it practically?
Sure. No, that's a great question. So I think a lot of it was forced. So like, I'll be the first one to be vulnerable about this. I was scared, right? I think I always wanted to do this. Like I was saying, my parents, I just didn't listen. I listened to them, right? But it's scary to change careers, right? Especially, I mean, now my kids are older. One's out of the house, she's an attorney, and the other one just graduated, right? So it's like, it's not the same, but I was forced to do what I love to do because of COVID. So what happened was I sold my business in 14. I actually, I don't want to, I had a bad experience with what happened, the way it went down, cost me a lot of money. I got screwed pretty badly. And so I had to first figure that out. So thank God I had a good reputation in the industry. My friends who owned an entertainment company, pretty big one, they brought me on as a salesperson. eventually a sales manager. I worked for them for a couple of years. I also have another friend in the business who has a catering hall, was opening up, turning it into a catering hall, needed some help. He brought me on to help him get that going. So I was working either for an entertainment company or for a caterer, as I was slowly growing this. And then I actually worked for the entertainment company. I left them. I went to work for my friend Matt, worked with him for 2 years, helped him get this up and running, and decided, I needed something more stable. And I went back. The entertainment guys brought me back as a sales manager. And I was there with them for a while. And then COVID hit. And everybody was out of work.
Sure.
And I was like, can I curse you? Right. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh shit. Right. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm screwed right now
Yeah.
if I don't figure this out.
Yeah.
And I think like literally that was like an aha moment for me. And I'm like, okay, like I need to do this. And my motivation was my kids, raising my daughter, raising my son with their anxiety and ADHD. And I was a parent member in the district. My wife's a special ed administrator. She was a special ed. Like it was all in my blood. I'm like, this is what I want to do. And I started going online and looking for coaching things. And I went back, I got my coaching certification. As I was working for them, I started bringing on some clients. I started doing work with a healthcare company out in California. They hired me. So I was doing some work with them. And then, it's like the scales, right? Like all of a sudden I was doing more coaching, right. And I got to the point finally where I was able to just leave it. But the truth is, I never went back after COVID. After COVID hit, I was like, okay, this is it. Like if I'm not going to do it now. So I paid for so many courses on just how to be more active on social, like just so much about how to get yourself out there. Cause I'm actually a very extroverted person in this world, but people that know me, I'm actually very introverted.
Okay.
Like I'm actually very shy. Like I can get up and speak in front of 1,000 people.
Okay.
No problem. If I walk into a bar and I have to meet somebody, I'm very uncomfortable sitting at the bar.
Yeah,
by
that's
myself.
what they say about Obama.
A lot of people.
I just finished reading a book. Was it his story or somebody about him where they were like, how Obama's like the most gifted orator. Like when he gets up, you're like this. But apparently like not a lot of people that are like that are not great one-on-one.
Harrison Ford is like that.
Okay. Yeah.
A lot of famous people.
That's fascinating. Like what it is. I don't have that. I could talk anywhere, anytime, anybody, right? Mo's like, shut the hell up, Z.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Small group, big group, me alone in the room, yapping it up.
But yeah, that was really it for me. So the courage, it was forced courage. Like, I'm not going to lie. I like to sit here and say, oh, it was amazing. I was like, I got to do this. No, I was like, holy crap, I'm collecting unemployment right now. And I don't want to be collecting unemployment. Yeah. And so like, I dug in and I was online and I was learning and reading books and learning and reaching out to people, reaching out to my contacts, people I know. And, little by little, let me introduce you. And, all of a sudden, and like my best thing is my investment banker sent me to he's like, you got to go to this webinar. I have this lady who's going to be on here. She does executive functioning. She works with teens. You should meet her. I was like, okay. So I went on the webinar. It was me and one mom. And afterwards she asked what we do. And I told her I work with teens. She's like, wait, you work with teens? I said, yeah. Like on the call the next day, the day after, she's like, I need a male coach. You're my male coach. And now I'm a coaching manager. I run the whole program for her. So wow. It's like, it's just sometimes it's being, it's a lot of it's being at the right place at the right time, but I'm also a big believer in like, I put the work in, like I definitely did what I needed to do. So if anybody's out there thinking about this, like the fear, everything you want's on the other side of fear. You just have to go for
awesome.
It, and I was forced into it. Like it forced me to do this. If I look at this in hindsight, I almost wish it didn't have to force me. I wish I could have just had the strength and the courage to do this on my own. But sometimes you need a little kick in the ass.
That's pretty incredible. And I still have a bunch of questions before we open it up. So first thing that comes out of that story is something I always tell like my kids, my friends. I tell Muhammad, I tell like my nephews, I tell my cousins, my brother, we talk about it. How important and I don't like to say something's the most important, but there's this class of things that are like first tier. Like there's very few things that in terms of your future are more important than your network or your relationships.
Yeah.
Like when you said, you were a little down and you started making calls and connecting, in the end, anybody who got anywhere got there with the help of person XYZ. And so the more of those XYZ relationships you've invested in, and people don't, I'm fascinated how many times this happens to me. Tell me if this happens to me, and Mo's there half the time this happens. I'll use the term cold call. What I mean is just out of nowhere, somebody's like, hey, doc, can you do XYZ? Take your pick. It's like ranges from, I'll get once a day. Do we get an email that's like, hey, my daughter needs to work or rotate or this or that, or wants a letter of recommendation. And I don't even know the guy sending it to me. I'm sure he met me once. He's, but like as if like, I'm going to like move aside a resident or somebody I know closely, all the way to, hey, I'm investing in this property, blah, blah, blah. And people, I think that's what relationships mean or networking mean. What happens is you have to invest in them day by day when things are good, right? And then there's a return on the investment when things maybe aren't so good or when there's an opportunity. And then that call, because I have a list of people that if they asked for something, I would take joy in helping them because they're so great. Like they're like I look at them as a brother or sister, like, there's those people. It's funny how the world works. A lot of times it's not those people that are asking for something, but it's important for the people in their formidable years to, I had my son, the next book I have my son reading is called, it's one of my favorite books. I don't know, it might be right up your alley. But the guy's name is Faraz or something. He was a consultant at like one of these McKinsey's. Then he went off and did his own thing. It's called Never Eat Alone.
Yep, I've heard of it. I haven't read it, but I've heard of it.
So I have my son reading it now. It's about that. And so I recognize that in your story. I do think you're underestimating yourself because you say, I wish I had the courage and I was forced. I think that's one way to look at it. There's a lot of guys in your position that there was a lot of safer things you could have done for a paycheck.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think what I'm most proud of is I didn't fold. I didn't cave, and I didn't let all the stress that I could have had and all of I didn't allow my circumstance to define me. I kind of said, okay, I need to go out there and do it. Right. So you're right. Like when I say to courage, like not having, like if COVID didn't happen, I don't know where I would be right now.
Sure.
That's what I mean. Right. Yeah. But when COVID did happen, yeah, I could have just collected unemployment and, gave up and be like, oh my God, my life's over. Yeah. What am I going to do? And no, I didn't do that. Like I got my ass up and I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. And I did. And you know what? Truth be told, I'm a very humble guy. All my friends, they're like, I cannot believe that you did this. Like you went from what you had and then you built this. They're like, how did you do that? I'm like, I don't think we could, you're right. Like I don't ever give myself, I'm very humble. Like it's just how I am.
It's a good trait,
I've grown up that way. Right. But it's true. Like a lot of people say to me, like, I don't think you ever take a step and actually realize what you've accomplished, because most people would not be able to do that.
It's an inspiring story. I love these, like I said, I love hearing the journey, because that's what it's about more than the destination. And I hope people that are listening are as inspired as I am. That was awesome. That story.
Thanks.
Now shifting to the professional side of things, before we get into it, like a term that I'm telling you, most doctors, most people, we very overlapping our professions. Most pediatricians could not define it. We get these reports all the time, and I know executive function. You talked about helping folks with executive function. I think people are familiar with ADD or ADHD.
Sure.
People are familiar with neurodivergent, although if you want to define it, you can. But executive function, which is, can you give an explanation of what you mean by that?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of aspects of executive function. So time management is one. Right. Just managing your time. Right. A lot of kids have time blindness. Right. Like they think, they think that I'm on my phone. Right. Yeah. I'm just going to go on Instagram or TikTok or Snapchat for 20 minutes.
5 hours.
Right. And all of a sudden 2 hours go by. Like they have time blindness, or this homework will only take me a half hour, and an hour and a half later, they're still doing it. So like,
sounds like me.
Understanding. Yeah. What we can say.
Sounds like me.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot.
Old you.
Oh, listen, a lot. Adults do it. Listen, adults have it too. Trust me. Plenty of adults with executive function. But it's time management. It's understanding how to manage your time. Like, do you ever notice in the schoolroom, there's never a digital clock at the front of the classroom. It's an analog clock, because you can see time moving with the hands, right? Digital clock. If you're taking an exam,
because of the state budget.
Yeah, right. So no, it's probably cheaper now to buy an digital clock than analog clock.
This is a classic.
Yeah, right. It's probably worth money now. Yeah. But you put a clock up there, like when you're taking an exam and you have 45 minutes, when you see that hand moving, it motivates you. Okay, I got to focus because like I'm running out of time. You look at a digital clock, you don't get that same.
Interesting.
So there's time blindness. So it's time management, right? What a lot of these kids, I mean, look at I mean, probably older than you, but my generation, I mean, we didn't get killed with homework. I was able to come home. I did my homework for an hour. I went and played hockey on the street, ball. And, it was now it's like a whole different world. They're in drama. They're in sports. They have so much to juggle. If they can't figure that out.
Yeah, they're professional students.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, and then what happens is they go to college and the opposite happens. Now they have all this time and they don't know what to do with it and they waste it.
Right.
So time management's a big piece of it. study skills, how to study, right? Like I always say, like your brain's like a filing cabinet, right? A lot of students will just they'll read their notes over and over and over. And I'm like, this is the worst way to study
Yeah.
because imagine going and filing papers and then you come across a folder that you have to file. And every time you finally find where it goes, it's already there. Like every time you do that, you're not learning something else because you just wasted your time trying to learn something you already knew, right? So just teaching them how to study. There's reviewing and then focusing on what you don't know and then reviewing again. Like there's ways to study. So just better study habits, learning to chunk things, right? Like if you have a project, a 10-page paper due, nobody wants to do a 10-page paper. And most kids don't want to get started on it because the thought of doing it. But if you can teach them how to look, this is when I have to have it done by, and this is today, all this time, just break it down into small, like teaching them how to do that. How to take better notes.
Yes.
How to use your notes, how to manipulate that data, how to take those notes and turn
Those
them
are
into
critical
study
skills,
guides.
man.
Yeah.
No, really.
And
like
nobody teaches them, and they're the meat and potatoes
No,
of being
they don't.
successful as an adolescent.
They don't teach us. And procrastination is another one. Like why we procrastinate. There's ways to bust procrastination. Everybody procrastinates differently
Okay.
based on their just who they are, right?
Yeah.
But there's ways to beat procrastination, and so it's
Give me a tip. How to avoid it.
like I have kids that I work with.
I want to go to
who-
the gym next week. How do I go to the gym tomorrow instead?
Oh, well, you mean not procrastinating on that?
Yeah.
That's more avoidance though, right?
Yeah.
Procrastination to me is more like, okay, I'm gonna well, I guess if you say you're going to go to the gym that day, you don't go. I mean, sometimes it's understanding the future consequence, right? Like, so teaching them, hey, okay, so you keep saying you want to go, but you're not going. How are you going to feel later when you realize you didn't go? You can feel okay. But it's like
But pulling that forward.
Right. This is the conversation you have. At the end of the day, I'm not there with them, right? So like if they keep making that mistake, but that's as a coach, that's what I'm going to say every time. How did you feel? I kind of felt like crap. Like I really wanted to go. And then I was beating myself up that I didn't go. I'm like, yeah, so just go.
Yeah.
Listen, I had one kid, I'll never forget. This kid was a senior. He was driving. He wanted to go to the gym. He was afraid. He was afraid to work out because he was a little overweight. And I'm like, listen, do me a favor. Just drive to the gym. I don't even care if you don't go in. Just drive there. Just get your ass out of bed and drive there. So he did. And like 3 days in a row, he drove to the gym and didn't go in. And then I saw him the next week. I'm like, how'd it go? He goes, first 3 days, I drove to the gym. I didn't go in. He goes, and then like over the weekend, I went. And I'm like, this is so stupid. Like I drove here. I'm not going. And he went in. And now he goes like 3 days a week all the time.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's just
desensitized.
And it's also like they get in their head. But for parents listening to this, like if your kid's procrastinating, you got to understand why they're procrastinating. It could be fear, right? Like if it's about going to something, right, where other people are involved, there could be like a deep fear about like being in that environment. That's why they're avoiding it. You have to understand why they're avoiding it. It could be a fear of, it could be just anxiety around, this, right? The fight or flight defense, right? Like when we get anxious, first thing we want to do is avoid. So when you're a teenager or middle school kid, right, and you get presented with something to do that you don't want to do, you're naturally going to avoid it, right? And that's the first thing you can do. And it's the same thing, understanding, okay, you're avoiding because of anxiety. How's your anxiety going to be in a week when now that paper that you had a week and a half to work on, you only have 3 days? How's your anxiety going to be then?
Right.
Oh my God, way worse. So what do you think about getting started now? Even if you just spend 20 minutes today, 20 minutes tomorrow, it's the same 3 hours over a week, doing it 2 days,
That's
2 nights
kind of
before.
like the chunking a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's chunking it. But like in their mind, they're procrastinating because the thought of having to write a paper makes them so anxious.
Right.
And also, there's a ton of AI tools out there now that you can use to do the heavy lifting. Like, I mean, honestly, you can go on ChatGPT now, and I'm not condoning writing your paper on it, but a lot of these kids, they have to write a paper on the start of World War II and what the impact on the economy of the world was, right?
Yeah.
You can go in there and be like, please help me outline a 10-page paper on blah, blah, blah. It will spit out the outline. And now all you have to, like, that's the heavy lifting. You've got your outline. Now all you have to do is you research and write the paper. Like you just took away a huge piece. So I believe AI could be very dangerous in many ways, but I do think there's a lot of benefits if you use it the right way. So kids that struggle with procrastination and just getting started, there's some great AI tools for that as well. So,
and that's interesting. Also, another specific question on the clinical or professional side. So you have a child with ADD. It's super common. I deal with it every day. as a professional who has clients who have ADD, that's super underdiagnosed out there, especially in the adult population. I cannot tell you, you're probably the one guy who can relate, how many people come to me and they're like, dude, this is the parents. I'm pretty sure I have ADD. And I see Jimmy, who's 14 or whatever, has similar traits, and I want to do something about it before ... Can you talk a little bit about adolescent ADD, like high level, like what you see, mid-level, like mistakes you see in understanding and managing it, and then maybe a couple of tactical maneuvers? I know you can't generalize, and I know every case is very different, but just offer something.
Yeah, I mean, so look, the first thing that comes to mind, and by the way, like you said, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know, but I've read enough about this. Like, I hear a lot that usually somebody else has it,
Mhm.
right? Like, I don't know that it's been proven to be genetically
No,
passed
there's
on,
a
but
genetic predilection.
but I do
Yeah,
believe that.
yeah.
So I think about this because I didn't find out till I was 45. Like when my son got it, I'm like, all right.
How did you find out when you were 14?
So I was dealing with some, just after the whole thing with my business,
Yeah.
right? I was seeing a therapist because I wanted to work on some stuff. And I'm like, I'm just curious. I'm like, I have crazy mad skills because I had to force myself. Like I'm so super organized. I'm like, but I know how my brain goes, and I know what happens. And they ran like tests on me. She's like, oh yeah, you've got full blown. So
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
all right. But like, I remember my dad
Yeah.
telling me as a kid, he was told he had something called, they used to call it St. Vitus dance.
Oh, I never heard of this.
Yeah, but that's what he told me. And I didn't know what it was. And then I researched it, and it was like a hyperactive kid.
Huh.
So like my father probably had it,
Yeah.
and then I had it, and my son has it. So I don't know if it's right, but I know that wasn't the answer. But
Oh,
my
that's
point is
interesting.
like when you have somebody who's like, I know a lot of parents who after their kid's diagnosed, they're like, you know what, I have similar qualities. I
Yeah.
wonder if and then they get tested and they do. So I do think there's some truth to that.
Yeah.
But the other thing too is look, I don't love that my kids are on medication when they
Mhm.
need to be, but if it works, I believe in it.
Mhm.
So a lot of it too is the medicine, right? I mean, if your kid's open to taking it and your family is not anti-medication, I
Mhm.
mean, some of these medications are amazing. My son could never have graduated college and gotten through high school, gone to college. I mean, when he was in kindergarten, we were like, I hope he even graduates elementary school. Like
Right.
we were very concerned,
Right.
and he ended up going to a good school and
Right.
graduating like with good grades,
Great.
right? So,
Great.
but medication helped him
Yeah.
tremendously, right? So I do think there's that component.
Uh-huh.
And then the other part of it, I mean, diet has
Mhm.
so much to do with it, right? Like,
Can you say more about that?
yeah, like a kid with ADHD, like soda and sugar and sweets, like that is the worst thing you can give them.
Right.
I mean, that's just gonna, increase it.
Yeah, fuel to the fire.
Yeah. And also I think I think a bigger thing with ADHD is understanding it
Mhm.
as a parent,
Mhm.
right? Like it's look, we get frustrated with our kids over stupid shit all the time, right?
Mhm.
But the truth is, kids with ADHD, like the stupid things they do, they really don't mean it. Like they
Mhm.
truly, truly have no idea
Mhm.
that their actions are having this impact on you.
Mhm.
And really just trying to understand your kid and how to work with your kid, like punishment. A lot of kids with ADHD or ADD, like punishment doesn't work.
Right.
Threatening them with it doesn't work. Reward works, right? I'm not saying reward them for every little thing, right? I'm definitely not one of those, oh, you
Yeah.
came in second place, you get a reward.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
definitely not that guy. But reward works better, right? Because they already know they're struggling. When they accomplish something, they feel good, right? Rewarding for that's important. And also like those kids, I mean, this is advice for every kid, but
Mhm.
especially kids with ADHD, working with them collaboratively on a plan that works because they understand how they think. We think we understand how they think, but you can't be in somebody else's head.
Mhm.
Like my son will say, when me and my wife, if something's going on, he will literally say, why are you raising your voice right now? I'm not doing this on purpose. Can we talk about, like, he will literally say that. I'm like, you know what, dude, you're 100% right. And
Yeah.
we're able to like back off. So I think,
Can I interrupt for a
Yeah.
second about this topic?
sure.
Someone said, could that just be nurture though? If a parent has habits that are consistent with ADHD, then the kids are most likely to adapt to those as their normals. And he said it's classic nature versus nurture argument. So he wants to know, is it just the nurture of a parent?
Again, I'm not a doctor, so I don't I couldn't give you like a
Doctor asking, by the way.
yeah, I couldn't give you like a medical reason for that. I mean, I do think it's right modeled behavior, right? I mean, model like if I think ADHD, you have it. If you have it, you have it. I don't think you can develop ADHD through somebody else that has it. You know what I mean? But if somebody's modeling behavior, they're always hyperactive, they're always interrupting, they're always whatever, and that's constantly what a kid's seeing. I would think, right? That kid might think that's normal behavior and adopt it. But I don't think that's where most ADHD comes from. I do believe like they have it, but I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Like I'm not trying to dodge the question, but I'm not a doctor. I really don't know the answer to that, but I would think for sure that, if parents are modeling a certain behavior and it's consistent, if your kid sees that behavior, they're going to think that's normal, and they're probably going to adopt some of those behaviors as well. So it definitely can make sense for sure.
Yeah, I think what I would add is, I think it's complicated, but I think here's the short version of my humble perspective on this is: one, I think the line you said about you either have it or you don't, you're not going to behave your way into ADD is really important. Two, I think if the whole story was these kids are mimicking their mom or dad who has those symptoms, then why would the number one complaint in a pediatrician's office be, Dr. Baker, I don't know where he gets it from? So I think if we feel that way, that they're modeling behavior, it's more that there's a genetic predilection causing the parent to be that, than because kids act the way their parents act consistently. Now, I am a big believer in modeling behavior. And I often tell people your kids will do what they see, not what they're told. I tell them that a lot, but usually more medium and long term than short term. Meaning I'll try to like instill a certain behavior in my kids. It doesn't work the next day. It's like when they're 8, they see it. And then when they're 14, 15, 16, they're starting to manifest it.
Yeah.
So when you consider all that, I think nature versus nurture is fair consideration, but I think it's a lot more nebulous than we think. I think on a practical basis, the bottom line is this: in my mind, and a lot of the data shows this, there's no question there's a genetic component, one, but two, it's not all or nothing. Because even if you have 7 kids with ADD, there's 7 different types and degrees of it. And so your behavior, which can be an addendum to it, we talked about medicine, that's one addendum. Another one can be cognitive behavioral. It could be a lot of other stuff, but modeling in the household, like what you said earlier about the household dynamic, can have a huge impact on which way the kid's going to end up. And I think that's the practical interpretation. Even if we can't put our finger on what it is exactly, I think we have a general understanding on how to address it.
I think you're right too. And I think really the modeling piece for me, that's where your kids develop values.
Yeah.
Their belief systems, their values, like that's what comes from the modeling. I do think, like you said, I think you're accurate. Like if a parent has ADHD and they're exhibiting those behaviors, there's probably a good chance that kid has it also.
Yeah.
Right. Can they pick up some of those behaviors? Maybe. I mean, there's definitely truth to that, right? Like you see somebody do something enough times and you're young enough, you're seeing it, you start to think that's the norm. I mean, it can definitely be, but I think for the most part, like you said, I think a lot of it is just, it's in the family. Somebody else has
And then
it.
before we just open it up wide, sorry, last one.
Did I answer your other question, by the way? Okay.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, this is a hell of a conversation. You're answering that question and many more that I've been asked. The anxiety stuff. The 2 biggest things I see in kids, ADD and anxiety. Like I see that that's all we see.
Yep.
13-year-old, 10-year-old, 15-year-old, 17-year-old parents come in. They're like, Samantha has anxiety, doc, this, that. And, as the doctor, we have a certain medical perspective on things. I actually, to be totally honest with you, tend to push against the medical perspective, not because it's wrong, but because I think there's so much out there that should be a part of what you do, not just what you do. And I see that being kind of where the conversation starts and ends. So we try to do a lot with breathing, mindfulness, meditation, yoga. I mean, we do that. We talk about that a lot more than when we write the script, right? That's kind of a small piece of what we do, if we do it at all. But we spend a lot more time on the holistic approach. Can you talk a little bit about the modalities you have with a teen or adolescent or even pre-adolescent who's demonstrates anxiety?
Yeah, for sure. So by the way, medication, I think ADHD, some kids, like they just, without it, they can't function. Right. So, but I agree. Like anxiety medication, I feel like doctors now just They write the script. My kid has anxiety. Yeah, breathing exercises is one for sure. Meditation, right? Teaching them how to meditate. But also, I think because we know this as adults, most adults don't do this. We try to, when we feel anxious, we try to avoid it. And actually, what you really need to do is sit with the emotion. You really need to sit with the anxiety and challenge the anxiety. So like a lot of times when I'm working with a child or a student who has anxiety, all right, what's causing the anxiety, right? And then because most of the time the things you're anxious about are completely irrational, right? Like you're either catastrophizing or you're a movie director. You're making the movie up and you know how it's going to end, but it never ends the way you think it was going to end, right? So like actually sitting with, like, I always use this analogy just to explain what I mean before I go on. Like, imagine a fan, big giant fan blowing, right? And every time we have a thought, there's an emotion that goes with it, right? And now you got this thought and emotion, and they're kind of floating around, and all of a sudden it passes by the big fan, and it gets sucked in, and that's your anxiety. It's just going round and round and round, and like you need to stick like a pen in the fan blades to stop them so it can continue on its way. But to do that, you have to like acknowledge it's there and sit with it, right? So I tell a lot of kids, and a lot of this is just psychologists work on this, like CBT training, right? Like, just, does it serve you to feel this way? And what evidence do you have of what you're feeling is actually real? Oh, I'm going to fail this test. Okay. Why do you think you're going to fail this test? I feel like I'm going to fail it. Have you failed a test in this class before? No. What'd you get the last one? I got an 88. What'd you get on the one before that? I got an 87. What makes you think this time you're going to fail? You consistently, right? Like, think about what you're saying, right? Like, you did okay. Like, you're probably going to get somewhere around the same thing, right? Does it always work? No. But if they do it enough times, if they challenge their thoughts enough times and actually sit with the thought and challenge it, it starts to come back less intensely. And then eventually you go, look, we're all going to have bad thoughts. We all have anxiety, right? Like you as we go through life, right? As parents, right? Our kids start to drive, we're anxious, our kids move out, we're anxious. Like, but so as these teenagers grow up, they're going to different thoughts of their relationships, getting into college. They're all going to have these anxious thoughts. But if they can learn how to manage those thoughts, it just, when they have those skills, it doesn't get to the point where it's just so debilitating. So that's besides meditation and breathing exercises, definitely sitting with the thought, talking it through. Also, what's the worst case scenario? Like, I always ask them, what is the worst thing that's going to happen if you fail this test? I'm going to get a B instead of an A. Okay. What happens then? I might not get into, my Ivy League school. Okay. If you don't get into Ivy League school, do you think you're never going to college? No. How's it going to affect you? Like, literally, I will walk them down the path. Like, how's this? Like, do you realize if I could take you in a time machine 10 years from now, look back on yourself, you're going to be like, I can't believe I worried about that stupid grade. It's going to have zero impact on your whole life,
Yeah.
And truth is,
So you have to deconstruct it.
well, that's it. Like, and we don't, like, we ignore, like, when we feel uncomfortable, we ignore it. So anxiety in kids, I mean, they don't want to deal with that. They got enough going on. Like, they're still trying to figure out, like, they're still trying to fit in. They're still, did I get enough likes on my post? Like, they got and that's the other, social media is the absolutely the number one reason why these kids are so anxious.
See it all the time. Yeah.
That it's the number one reason. I mean, if we got rid of social media, I think you would see emotional health in this country for teens go right down. Yeah. Like, literally, this is what it is. Because think about when we didn't have all this.
Yeah.
They're flooded with this.
I agree 100%. Two comments I would make. One of my favorite I'm a big proverb guy. I got a couple of books.
Go for it.
I love proverbs. I always butcher them. I think one of them, Mark Twain, it could be Twain. I could be wrong. He said, my life has been full of catastrophes, or something like, my life has been full of catastrophes, none of which I've actually lived through.
Yeah, I think it was him.
Something like that, where anxiety, like, there's all these things that are so bad that are going to happen every day to me. And then you look back and you're like, well, I managed. And so there's this taxing. So actually you end up suffering more than if the stuff actually happened, because you're your own worst enemy. And trying to get through to people, I always, I tell parents, even, because, I'll tell you what I do. I'll tell you this. This is more anecdotal. I said what I said about the ADD relationship with the parents and it being more kind of intrinsic or whatever. I see in a lot of kids, I see anxiety. The number one reason is social media, meaning external reason. The number two is the parents.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, Mo, how many? It's not that common. It's not that common where I have a kid. It happens. But the majority of the time I have a kid who's demonstrating anxiety, I could trace it to one of the parents.
Yep.
and you know they're medicalizing the kid, right? No, well, her abdominal pain must be something, and then you get the chart. They've gone to 60 doctors, and see, if I'm a 13-year-old and you're dragging me from hospital to hospital and doctor to doctor, of course I'm going to have anxiety,
Yeah.
right? You're telling me something's wrong with me. I don't, I'm living a life where there's something wrong with me, or I see how the parents react, right? Like to anything, to news, to this. Well, Dr. Baker, what does the blood work show? What does the blood work show? Blood works fine. But if that 60 seconds is telling me how their whole life is, and it can really wear and tear on a kid, because what you said is right. While ADD, you may have to have that thing or not. Anxiety, we all have.
Yeah.
So it's not black and white, because we all have anxiety, and anxiety actually is necessary for certain things. You need it for some degree of performance, but it's managing and harnessing it. So, if ADD wasn't complicated enough, I think anxiety is probably more complicated in terms of its, root and how to manage it and how to deal with it and so on and so forth. And so I think now the social media, the probably one of the guys I admire the most, and I've read one of his books and I've heard him lecture, is Dr. John Haidt from NYU.
Oh, yeah, he's great.
Yeah, he's great. And his perspective, he backs it up with data and stuff, and we see it, right? I agree with you. If social media vanished tomorrow, I think our kids' mental health will greatly improve. And you get all these people who push back and they say, well, people said that about, what is it called? Luddites. People said that about when TV started, that TV would ruin this, and radio. It's not the same.
No.
It's not the same, because what I tell people is this. And I'm really curious on your perspective on this. This is one of my theses when I deal with kids. I tell parents, as the kids getting into adolescence, like getting, when they're 6, 7, 8, 5, 4, they're really under your control. Past puberty, their friends have at least as much influence on the type of person they're going to become as you do. And you need to watch your friends, who their friends are. You need to be aware, because they have a huge influence with them. And when I was a kid, you have 3, 4, 5 friends. Your parents know them. That's who you hang out with. And that's the world that's influencing you outside of your house.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now with social media, it's everybody on the planet that's influencing that kid, right? That there's no barrier. So as a parent, it's virtually impossible. Now you could put locks and this and that. But the point is, unfeathered social media means your kid has access to every corner of this world to influence them, good, bad, and ugly.
Right.
And so how many times? Well, Dr. Baker, look, you guys are on social media now. Yeah, I get it, dipshit. But the point is, everything is good and bad. But when you're a 14-year-old, you're not going to the good stuff necessarily. You're going to the salacious stuff. And then with girls, especially,
Right.
it's wild. And so I agree. I hope people take that away and have close monitors in that regard.
Yeah. Well, listen, what did you see that movie, The Social Experiment, on Netflix?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a joke.
He was
It's
an ex Facebook guy.
Google or
guy?
Facebook. I mean, these people, there's literally, it's like
great
I joke around.
documentary.
It was. It's like these beady-eyed guys sitting behind there on your, and as soon as you click on, all right, send them this. Like, they're only seeing what they want them to see.
Yeah.
Because that every time they get that dopamine hit,
Yeah.
they feel good. But that's the problem with social media. We're making these kids feel good every time they get a dopamine hit. So when they don't get one, they don't feel good.
Right.
And the truth is, they need to feel good from within. They shouldn't need validation from other
My
people.
classmates got 5 likes. I only got 2.
Yeah.
Right. That's not how it should be, but that's the world we unfortunately
It's just crazy.
created.
And then it's also like you see it now, like, kids, I feel like a lot of kids are struggling with like a sense of self.
Mm-hmm.
Social media allows them, I can be part of this group, so I'll fit in here. So they'll do what they need to do to be part of that group because they feel included.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't necessarily mean they really know everything about that group or what they're really about.
Yeah.
It's just, and that's where it becomes dangerous, because it's like you're giving up a part of yourself. You're putting on a mask. That's the thing. You're wearing a mask to fit in. Eventually, that mask is getting ripped off, and when it does, all those people are going to be like, "This is not even who you are."
Yeah.
And now you're alone.
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather be alone now and figure it out. Because if you're willing to find your tribe and suck it up and not go in that direction
on authentic terms.
Yeah, you're gonna if you can be more authentic and just kind of find your alignment and your true north, like you're gonna be much better off. But yeah, but what you said about the parents, I mean, 100%, right? Like, my wife will probably kill me for saying this. I love her to death, but like, she's got anxiety.
Yeah.
I definitely think like her and my daughter used to fight like cats and dogs. And I think a lot of it was because, they would put their anxiety on each other, and so you're 100% right. Like, if you have an adult like one piece of advice, I say this all the time, and not every parent will agree with this, and that's okay. This is what I believe. If you're a parent that's struggling, I think it's okay to say to your kid, listen, I'm really anxious today. I am stuff going on. I'm very anxious. So if I get short or I'm just not myself, I need you to just understand why. When you let your kids know that like you have anxiety and that like you struggle with that,
100%.
it humanized, like you just brought yourself to their level.
Yeah.
They will get you
100%.
and they will absolutely respect that. And they will in turn check themselves and be like, hey, I'm feeling anxious now. So it goes back to that modeling of values and belief systems.
100%. And I want to open it up to some of the questions because I know we've been at it and I could keep going because I'm really intrigued. This is incredible. But
I appreciate
I
being
want to allow some of the viewers to kind of
Just a couple questions, not that many. This is a good one. Someone asked, how do you stay informed about the evolving issues and trends that affect the well-being of the youth today?
Me or as a parent? Like,
Both.
Well, I mean, I go to a lot of seminars. I read a lot, right? I'm constantly, I get a lot of magazines that are related to, social emotional learning and youth mental health. The truth is you got to talk to your kid. You got to talk to your kid about it because every kid's experiencing the world differently. Right. And like, again, right. So many factors. So, staying informed, I mean, definitely talking to your child. The other thing is it's more you being aware of how your child's behaving. Like if if you see your kid sitting in the room all the time, like a lot of parents see their kid in their room and they think they're depressed, but the truth is if they're on Discord and they're playing video games all the time, that's how they communicate. We used to go out and play ball. They play, like if they're not sad and they're eating and they're going to school and they're getting sleep and, they're probably okay. But you can ask them, hey, I notice you're in the room a lot. Is everything okay? Like asking your kid questions, checking in on them. That's one way. The other thing is if you notice your kid's not himself or herself, right? I mean, talk to the teachers, call the school. Be like, hey, I'm just curious. How's my child in school? Do they seem okay? Right? Like you ask people or their friends, right? Like, I mean, it depends on the age, right? But if it's younger kids, middle school kids, right? Like, I'm sure it's play dates, right? How's so-and-so been? Like I know he was over there the other day. They seem okay, right? Like it's okay to ask those questions because I think that other parent would want to be able to share the same thing. When they're older, they're in high school and your kid's not, I mean, I remember this with my kids. Like if I was worried about one of my kids, like I would talk to their best friend, be like, hey, is everything okay with Jessica? I noticed she's been like really, yeah, she's like, they won't tell me everything, but you know what? They know that I'm concerned and now my kid knows that I'm concerned. So, but yeah, I mean, but as far as the trends and what's going on, I mean, if your kid has ADHD, I mean, there's magazines for that. There's ADHD magazine. There's CHAD, which is an organization focused on ADHD. I mean, Autism Speaks. If you have child with autism, I mean, tons of information. And truthfully, if you go on like the state website, they're always posting like mental health counseling and trainings and updates on what's going on in schools and what's going on in the world. Like you could just sign up for the newsletter. There's tons of places to get that.
Nice. A couple more questions. This parent asked, can you give advice for an 18-year-old? He just graduated high school, but doesn't feel that college is for him. He's thinking about vocational, occupational, and less academic endeavors. Any advice that you would give?
Yeah. Well, first of all, right, the fact that he's verbalizing that he doesn't want to go, like respect that, right? Because listen, I know guys that are plumbers that are making $200,000 a year,
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
I mean, like, listen,
and happy.
right? Look, I was telling you guys earlier, like my son's a musician, right? He's, unless he makes it big, he's not going to make a ton of money, right? But he'd rather do what he loves. If he knows, if he doesn't know what he wants to do, the one good thing about vocational school is, you could try different things, right? I mean, I would definitely talk to him. What are his interests, right? There's question. What do you really like to do? Like when you think vocational, do you like to work with your hands? Do you like, what do you like to do? I mean, maybe he loves to go to the gym and work out. Well, maybe being a personal trainer is a great, well, maybe he likes working on cars. I mean, auto mechanic, like it's just, you got to talk to him about what he likes, but I definitely would support that. If he's saying to you, you're going to get those kids that say, I don't know if I want to go to college. You got to dig a little deeper. But when you get a kid that says, I just don't want to go to college, I'd rather do something vocational. Great. What do you want to do? You could be a tech. You can go get your tech degree and Google's going to probably hire you for like 50, 60,000 at a tech school, right? Whereas if you went to MIT, you're probably making 250. If you're that good at coding and as a software engineer that you learned at some smaller school or some certification, if you're that good, you'll be making that same money in 3 or 4 years. So, you know, if he's got a passion for something, like let him lean into it, support it. Because you know what? That's the one thing about kids too. I don't care how old they are. Even my kids at this age, all they want to do is please us as parents and make us happy. That's all they care about. And if they think they're disappointing us, they won't do it. And how many times do we send the wrong message, some of us, to our kids that we are disappointed even though we're not, but they think we are, and then they avoid doing something they love.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I want to ask a more complicated question. So I agree with everything you said. So I have a question on how you reconcile two truths within that paradigm that could be conflicting. So you want to push your kid as a parent to reach their potential, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's second to them being fulfilled and happy, right?
Right.
You also don't want to break them. You don't want to cause them to, you don't want to break their confidence. You don't want to, you know, so, okay. So there are, if you're going to do that, there's going to be times you have to express disappointment. You have to set a high standard that they can meet that. Otherwise, if you're too laissez-faire, if you're too, hey, everything's all good all the time, then there's no motivation. What's the right balance? And I know that's a hazy question, but I think a lot of folks, I struggle with that. I'm a freaking parent and a pediatrician.
100%. So I'm going to, you know what? I'm going to share a personal example because this is literally what I'm going through right now. Okay. No, I agree with you. You can't just, they have to know when you're disappointed. I just mean like, you don't want your kid who wants to be a plumber because that's what he loves. I love working with I love it. I've seen people do it. It's something I could be really good at. Right. Like, you don't want them to feel that it's not okay to do that. You're disappointed that they're choosing that path. However, like I was saying, my kid, I mean, he finished, graduated in December. He had to take one online class. He finished in the middle of February. Every day I'm like, dude, did you apply for a job? I'm working on, and I told him, I said, like, guess what? The money's cut off. You keep asking for money. You're not going out with your friends anymore. You want to go out with your friends, you get a job. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, I love you, but you need to find work. I don't care if you go work at CVS. I don't care what you do until you figure out what you want to do. But you can't sit in the house and play video games and watch TV all day. Like, you need to get a job. And now he's so, you know, he knows I was disappointed. He knows like that is okay. But I'm never going to say to him, you picked a career to be in music business. Right. And the fact that you think you're going to be a professional drummer, like, it's never going to happen. Like, I'm not going to kill the dream. Go for your dream. Yeah. Just as long as you are smart about it and you have a plan to make money and support yourself. Like, if you want to stay in the music, if you want to go work at Sam Ash and sell drums, God bless you. If you can do that, make money and be happy, I'm okay with that. Like, I'm not going to steer you away from that, but get the damn job at Sam Ash. Stop not doing anything. So like, that for me is where that is. But I think what I was trying to tell that parent is just like, you know, if he knows he wants to go vocational, let him lean into it with him and support it and collaboratively figure out with him what does that look like for him? Because if he feels supported, chances are he's going to go at it on his own without needing the motivation.
Yeah. Awesome.
Nice. A couple more before we wrap up. Someone asked if you can share a success story of a young client who experienced positive transformation through your coaching.
Yeah. So I had a girl I was working with. I won't say names, but it was on Zoom, right? This person was actually in Tennessee. I was working with this girl, you know, barely got through high school, right? Just not a good student, ADHD, and I think also a little struggling with some depression. She did see a therapist for that, but you know, we were talking. She loves animals, loves animals, and you know, her mom was like, "I don't want you to go to, you know, if you don't want to go to college, you don't have to go." And I said to her, "You know what? Why don't you go get a job at Petco? Go work at a pet store, just for now. Just go work at a pet store." So she did, and she worked in like the washing the dog department, like where she would just help out. She was an assistant. She was so good at it. They asked her to go to, they would pay for her to go to grooming school. And she just had to work for them for, I think it was like a year. Like, you had to work a certain amount of days for them. They paid for her to go to grooming school. And I was talking to her this whole time, right? Because she was teetering on going back to school, not going back to school. And I'm like, listen, if if you don't want to go back to school, like if the thought of going back to school scares you, like and we talked about what scares you more, going back to school or this? She goes, no, I love the grooming. I'm like, well, you could turn that into a business. And she started her own little practice. She works out of her house, you know, now I think she moved out because this was like 4 years ago, but she was grooming dogs at like $150 a pop, and she was doing like 10, 12 dogs a week. So, you know, 23 years old, because she took some time off, 23 years old, she started her own business, you know, and she just needed, and listen, her parents are wonderful people, but they were, you know, again, so like, you got to get a higher education. It's like, it's not for everybody. And once she realized what she loved and she found a passion for it, she followed it. I mean, I think I spoke to her maybe 8 months ago, but she was like looking to move out, and, you know, she was making almost $2,000 a week.
Nice.
I mean, that's pretty good.
Nice.
So that's one. I mean, I could share so many, but that's
Yeah.
one that
You
I
directed
love.
her.
I love that story.
To
So that's
find
why
the right version of herself.
Yeah.
Last question before you wrap up, unless Z, you have any more. This one, they said, me and my spouse are separating, possibly divorcing. How do we mince negative impact on our kids? They're 8 and 10 years old.
Well, so negative. Listen, the divorce sucks, right? Listen, the most important thing, I don't know the circumstances around it, what's going on, why it happened, but at the end of the day, your kids have to be in the forefront of your mind, and like whatever's going on, be kind to each other in front of them. And definitely, like the worst thing parents can do is trying to turn the kids on the other parent. The minute you do that, those kids are so screwed up. They're going to be in therapy because they don't know what to do. And because it goes back to the same thing. I want to please mommy. I want to please daddy. Right. Mommy says this about dad. Dad says this about mom. Right. They don't know what's the truth. They don't know what to do. They're completely confused. Like, it sucks. Like, I feel bad that anybody has to go through that. But if you are, just, you know, whatever you're feeling outside of your kids, that's between mom and dad, right? And you can have those feelings, and you're entitled to do what you need to do with the lawyers or whatever. But like, when you're around your kids or not around your kids, just, you know, dad's still dad, mom's still mom. Like, treat, you know, like you should make sure that you give each other the respect that you deserve as parents, because you're still the parents, and whatever's going on between you has nothing to do with your kids. And if you try to poison your kids, it's no good for anybody, especially the kids.
Nice. Z, do you have any?
I mean, I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
That was great. I'd love to, and if somebody has another question, we can do it, but I'd love to have you back.
Love to come
if
back.
you don't mind.
From your boy, actually, Elias. He asked, any advice for parents that put their kids on social media all the time?
Put their kids on social media.
Yeah.
So when you can you clarify that question?
I mean,
Like,
I guess there's two ways you can look at it. Like, I guess on their personal pages where they're posting their kids, but I do see now like a lot where parents will make social media pages for their kid, act as their kid. So either way, either or.
Oh, see, okay. Well, look, you know.
Yeah, I think that's what E means.
Yeah, I think that's what he means.
Because I don't think it's a bad thing if like
you're
hugging your kid on like his birthday. On
no,
Facebook.
but then there's like those parents that post every little accomplishment.
Well, yeah,
of
you
your
can
kid.
go
It's
extreme.
like,
Yeah,
okay,
for
it's
sure.
like I don't need to know everything about your kid, right? But milestones are fun. You're talking about a parent who actually like
makes a social media page for their kid, acting as their kid.
Yeah, I mean, why? Like, honestly, my advice, I don't know who I'm giving that advice to. If I'm giving the advice to the parent that's doing it, my advice is like, stop.
Yeah.
Like, why would you do that? Like, I mean, right off the bat, it goes back to what I kept saying, right? About like autonomy. If you're doing that, your kid's going to think that's who you want them to be. And what if that's not what if that's not aligned with who they are, their values, or what they believe about themselves? You're literally saying to them, that's who you need to be. And now it's on social media, they have to be that way because everybody thinks that's who they are.
Right.
That's like the worst thing you could do for your kid.
Right.
Like, stop. Like, if you're doing that, stop.
Right.
Nice. Not for you, Keith. From Beats for you, Z. He said, Z, why do you have your dogs out? He's not talking about buddy.
So thanks again for doing this. I appreciate it.
Tell Beats you'll see him Sunday in the office and we could discuss it.
Yes, we're dodging that question.
I see him before that.
No, you're with me tomorrow.
Okay, good. Thanks for doing this.
I appreciate it.
Are we going to post Keith's information?
100%, yeah.
Because we have 1 million folks, and I'd like to continue the conversation.
Yeah, I love it.
It'd be great because this is so helpful for the community. I mean, this is something that touches every family. There isn't a family that doesn't benefit from this if there's kids in there. There's topics that in the future, whether it's you or your colleagues, like one, I think we talked about kids when they have struggles, but I think something that's overlooked, and you mentioned at the beginning, is like the kid in Yale who like is overdriven, or the straight A student, and how even these I have families that have one kid who's like struggling academically, buddy, and another kid who is overdrive academically, and they both have equal amounts of anxiety
for
and
different
stress.
reasons.
And then the other thing is athletics. Like, I don't know if there's a lot now. High school sports are like what college sports were like yesterday, and college sports are now what pro sports were yesterday. And so high school athletes now are under major spotlights, a lot of them.
Yep.
And mindfulness and focus to perform athletically. Professional athletes do that. Now you have that happening at the AAU level, right? But those are some topics that I think if you could come back, I'd like to delve into. But I want to thank you for coming out. This was amazing.
No, I appreciate you having me.
It.
I'm always happy to.
Yeah,
So
and
I
hope to
love
continue the
talking about this
conversation.
stuff.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
much
thank you.
appreciated.
Thanks, guys. We'll
Thank you.
see you guys next week.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
That was awesome.
This was good.